There's Dana saying TikTok Shives, and there's David just a little bit earlier saying TikTok Shives. David, you don't get to do that. Don't you ever fucking do that again. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Here's an interesting question in the live chat right away from Radis Norvegicus. Does the word moist make you feel uncomfortable? No, absolutely not. Because it makes me think of a delicious chocolate cake, and that's how you want it to be. You want it to be nice and moist. No, doesn't make me uncomfortable whatsoever. Hi, everybody. I'm going to dispense with the introduction for the most part here because I have a whole bunch of questions that were sent in ahead of time by my patrons and channel members. Thank you all so much. And in order to get to them as quickly as possible, I'm going to get to them as quickly as possible. So as always, if you have something for me in the live chat, please try to hold on to it until I get through the patron and member questions. Just one more thing real quick. Boxy Brown 6900 became a $5 a month level member of the channel. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for being around in the chats and on the at the streams for a while. All right, here we go. Time for the patron and member questions. And the first one is from William Tucker, who says, "Thanks for being so open to your viewers. When I was younger, Captain Kirk was a hero to me. With his flaws, he's still inspiring. Who inspires you?" Well, I mean, as far as fictional characters, Superman. Hello. Yeah, Captain Kirk, Captain Picard. As far as real people, Malala Yousafzai, Greta Thunberg, any person that does something in the cause of righteousness that I feel like I don't know if I would have the courage to do. Like, you know, people who go out and protest, people who are taken political prisoner and try to, you know, stand up and stay strong during that ordeal. You know, people like that, people who do in real life, it's people who do truly selfless and courageous things, in the cause of righteousness. Those are my heroes. But in terms of fictional characters who inspire me, Superman's a big one. Carlisle the Cinephile, greetings and salutations, Steve. My father and my father-in-law are complete opposites on the political spectrum and are engaged in intense debate over the state of things in the world, specifically the debacle between Vladimir Zelensky. My dad is on the progressive side, and my father-in-law is an ardent Trump supporter. We've interacted enough for you to know what my stance is, but I haven't engaged in the arguments myself at the request of my wife, and because I think arguing about this is futile. But it's getting harder and harder to do so. It's really stressing me out to be caught in the middle. Do you have any advice for this? How do you react when you're caught in the middle of a family dispute? I request from all parties involved who are putting me in the middle not to put me in the middle. And then if one of those parties continues to try and put me in the middle, despite my request that I not be, I try to remove myself from that person's life as much as possible. Because fuck that. If I am being and it's not just family, it's anybody, but family, I mean, and family obviously can be more difficult to extract yourself from entirely if that's if it's your father or your father-in-law or someone like a close family member that you do kind of just, you have to see, you know, just as a matter of living your life. It's not as, or, you know, if it's your dad, you might, or your father-in-law, even, you might not want to completely cut them out. So it can be more complicated, but as a rule, if people try to drag me into a conflict that I am not involved in and I have no interest in, and I say, don't bring me into this, and they keep bringing me into it, then we're done. Or at least we're done as much as we can be done, because that's fucking bullshit. Good luck with that, by the way. Farah Grimm, as always, you rock. My husband thinks it is so cool you interact with your fan base. On to my question. Through a transporter accident, the world now has 2 copies of yourself. Think Riker split, not Kirk. Okay, so it's not good Steve and bad Steve. It's just 2 Steves. What kind of shenanigans do you get into with your duplicate? I think we got to be robbing some banks. I think we got to team up, and one Steve can be robbing the bank while the other Steve is establishing the alibi so that the Steve that robs the bank and gets away doesn't, get arrested. I feel like that's where we have to go. The two, or or magic. We could do like a prestige thing, you know. Sorry for spoiling the Prestige for anybody who hasn't seen the Prestige, but it's been out for long enough. If you wanted to see it, you would have seen it by now. Yeah, either magic or robbing banks, one of those two, or maybe both, depending on how we feel. I'd have to talk it over with my duplicate. General Contact Unit Problem Child. You didn't focus on it much, but there was a part of that document you read that particularly bugged me. This is the document I read, the third way document that I read as a part of a video I did recently. Third way, no way, or how not to fix the Democratic Party. It said people find the GOP's message that everyone can get rich more appealing than the left's message that we need to redistribute wealth. The thought I had is that even if it is a more appealing message, the fact remains that it's a lie. There is no version of capitalism that can allow everyone to be rich. That's not how the system works. The GOP know that, but they're okay lying because they don't really believe in democracy and so don't mind undermining the democratic system with misinformation to win. If you actually do believe in democracy, you can't try to win by just telling people what they want to hear, regardless or in relation to reality. You have to tell people the truth, the things they need to hear, then do the work to convince them to accept it. If people don't think we need redistribution, progressives need to convince them we do, not just concede the point. Thoughts? I agree with you 100%. Let me just open my sugar-free ginger ale here. Canada Dry. I was drinking it before the current trade war began because it is my preferred brand, but it feels extra nice to be drinking Canada Dry these days. No, I agree with you on this, and I agree with you on a bunch of other points. I made the general point in that video, and I've made it in other videos as well many times, that one of my greatest frustrations with the Democratic Party, at least with the establishment mainstream Democratic Party, and I think we have seen an example of that this week in Congress, is that Democrats they are too willing to just concede points instead of arguing. They are not willing to make their case. If they feel like an issue is trending against them, their go-to move is to just try and ignore it and focus on other things, as opposed to making an argument. And the example I use most often these days is with trans people. Well, the trans issue, I don't know, people might be against us on that. Let's not talk about that. Instead of coming out and saying, no, we're right on this. And if you care about equality, if you care about civil rights, if you care about liberty and freedom, you need to be on our side on this. We are right. Trans people deserve rights. Trans people deserve to be treated with respect. Trans people exist and are real, and they are their genders, whatever that gender may be for them, and we need to fight for them. And if you want to say you care about freedom and democracy and liberty and equality, you need to be fighting for them too, instead of just sort of backing off and saying, okay, I guess people don't want to hear about this. That's cowardly. That's cowardly. That's what a coward does. And it's on many, many different issues where the Democrats do that. They concede the point, or they just try not to talk about it, instead of, as you say, doing the work to convince people that we are on the right side. This is important, whether it's climate change, Green New Deal, other economic issues, or social issues, or whatever. We're right on this. This is the right thing to do. This is what we need to do. This is what we should be doing. And here are the reasons why. And here's why we want your support. And here's why you should help us to do this. That's what they should be doing. But far too often they are doing exactly the opposite. And they are just going, oh, okay, never mind. Sorry, we didn't mean to upset you. And then they try to move on to something else. It's cowardly and it's ineffective. JDC. Hi, Steve. You mentioned a few years ago that you had not read any of the Batman comics where they introduce his son Damian as Robin. If you've read any since, what did you think? If not, what Batman should I be reading? I have not read any of those comics since. I am not reading any current comics, so unfortunately, I cannot advise you as to what Batman you should be reading right now. A lot of people are really excited about Absolute Batman. That's the new one. I read the first issue of it, and it really didn't do much for me. I mean, I thought some of the art was kind of cool, but it just didn't light my world on fire. But you might disagree. So I mean, that's what a lot of people are reading. Absolute Batman. Maybe you can check it out and maybe you'll like it. But like I say, I'll probably wait until the first sort of story arc is out. Maybe wait until they publish like a collected edition of the first story arc and then go back and read it and see what I think then. But like I said, I checked out the first issue and it really didn't do a whole lot for me. Jim P, on the last Ask Away, you were asked about your musical tastes. It got me thinking about how over the last few years, I've been having a hard time listening to the artists I have since I was a kid, country. In the past, they've always been in the Southern liberal camp, but more and more have been catering to the MAGA crowd. Have you been experiencing this at all? I guess this is similar about separating the artist from the art, but feels different than TV and movies. So how? I've been drifting more towards OPM, which has some great artists such as Morissette and Gigi Delana, if anyone is interested. Thanks for everything you were doing. No, I mean, Eric Clapton kind of coming out as like an anti-vaxxer was really disappointing because I'm a huge fan of Eric Clapton's music. And him revealing himself to be kind of a dipshit on science issues. And has he come out as anti-trans as well? I'm not sure. I can never keep track of all the British celebrities who have come out as anti-trans versus the ones that haven't. So I don't want to say Clapton is if he hasn't, but I've something in my mind made me think, is he anti-trans as well? I don't know, but he's definitely been saying a lot of anti-vax stuff, and that, for years now, for many, many years. He was one of the people that I think COVID kind of revealed what a shithead he was. And yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. It's the kind of thing that doesn't make me want to necessarily speak openly about the fact that I enjoy his music. Doesn't make me want to spend money on any new music he might make. I mean, there's definitely that decision that you have to make. So yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the same thing as any other kind of art. It's, you get to decide as an individual whether this artist or the work created by this artist is worth it to you to try and separate the art from the artist, and what that's going to look like for you. If that's going to mean you're just not going to buy any of their new stuff, you're not going to support them going forward with your dollars, or if you are just not going to listen to their music or watch their movies or read their books, or if you're just going to go cold turkey and not engage with their work past or future at all, or if you're going to continue to enjoy the stuff you have enjoyed, or if you're going to continue to enjoy the stuff you have enjoyed, but in private and not talk about it with other people so that it doesn't, give the impression that you support them despite their crimes or what have you. So there's a lot of different complexities to navigate, and everybody has to navigate those on their own, according to their own choices and their own conscience. And yeah, that sucks that you have to do that when some of your favorite musicians come out as MAGA. But, unfortunately, especially in country music, that has been happening, and it sucks. It sucks. And my sympathies to you. But yeah, I've experienced things like that in the last few years, and yeah, it's something that you have to decide how to deal with on your own. But I am glad that you have found other music that you've been able to enjoy. That's important too. Arrow on Fire, who hopes he made it on time. Yes, you did this time. Hi, Steve. In the most bonkers episode of all, Kira is pregnant with Keiko's baby, and Quark hires Garrick to assassinate himself. Quark is kind of dumb here, but I think if he asked Garrick to accident Brunt, Garrick would have been able to do it without anyone ever suspecting anything. My question is, would Garrick be interested in doing that? I think Garrick would help his acquaintance, especially if he gets to kill someone while he's at it, and especially if he learns Quark's mom's safety is threatened by the target. Plus, he could get rid of a capitalist leech on society. But this guy I talked to on Discord thinks Garrick wouldn't want to work as a hired killer. But he does murder those Romulans later without a thought. What do you think? Also, this is a GIF I made from the episode Best Wishes. And before I answer the question, here is the GIF, or GIF if you prefer. that was made from the episode. Look, it's O'Brien with his look at his little brow and his ears going up and down. Oh boy. What a crazy guy that O'Brien is. So anyway, no, well, like you said, he wouldn't just be a hired killer. He would be a hired killer for someone that he knows and isn't necessarily like friends with, but someone he's acquainted with, is sort of friendly with. Maybe they could work out some kind of a mutual deal. So it's not as though Garrick is just being approached by a stranger. It's not like the Schofield kid riding up to William Money's house at the beginning of Unforgiven and going, "You want to go on a killing with me?" Like, there's a pre-existing relationship between Garrick and Quark. I mean, and it's not, for me, the point is, it's not so far outside of Garrick's character that I don't think you could have made it work in a story. Like, if the writers had decided to make that episode about Quark hiring Garrick to kill Brunt, instead of Quark hiring Garrick to kill Quark himself, I think you could have made that work. I don't think that people would have watched that episode going, "Well, Garrick would never do that." Like, I think it's at least close enough to something that Garrick would do that I think a good writer could make it work. David Colby is not a pod person. That's exactly what a pod person would say, I must point out. I wasn't here last week because a hacker got access to my Discord and Gmail. It was a nightmare. I got it back and I'm now getting my life back on track. So I'm going to punt something easy. What are you looking forward to most in Andor Season 2? A rotating cast of completely interchangeable scruffy humans? Episode after episode of waiting for Andor to do something? He will not do anything. Oh, how about once finally rebel shit finally happens, the Empire rapidly kills everyone, but some character goes, "Rebellions are built on hope," so leftists think the show is some super fucking deep commentary on fascism and not the audio-visual equivalent of watching paint dry. Oh, we can have the most dynamic and interesting scenes. I'll be watching Arnold Rimmer cosplays as a space fascist. I bet that'll be scintillating for the 20 to 30 second long clips that will be interspersed through every single episode as they cut together things like they threw 2 episodes worth of plot into a blender. Can I just tell you what a comfort it is, and what I feel it's just a beautiful moment of connection between the two of us, because we don't always see eye to eye on things. You're a much bigger fan of Lower Decks than I am, and I'm a much bigger fan of Strange New Worlds than you are. So, but we have a similar mindset and similar points of view on most things. So the fact that we can come together on not being impressed by Andor is really nice for me, David. And it's, especially since it seems like you really like it even less than I do. Like, you really seem to hate it. And I didn't hate it. And there were things about it that I definitely admired, and things that it tried to do that I admired a lot more than things that it succeeded in doing. But yeah, we both kind of thought it was just way too long and mostly really fucking boring. And yeah, one of the biggest problems with it is that Andor, the title character, the nominal hero of the piece, is the most boring person in the thing and almost never does anything. Why do you name the show after the guy who spends most of the episodes standing around watching other people not do things and occasionally doing things, but he rarely does things himself? Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the fans of the show arguing with people like me who don't, and people like you who don't enjoy it, that actually we have to enjoy it because it is anti-fascist. Because that was my favorite part of, actually, I got a comment, because I did a video, I think, 2 years ago when it came out, I did a video about how, even though I didn't really like the show, I appreciated the way the story was structured relative to how other streaming shows are structured. And I used Andor, even though for the most part I didn't like the show, I used Andor as a positive example for how I thought streaming shows ought to be structured if they're going to do, like, season-long story arcs or multi-episode story arcs. And so the bulk of the video was not about shitting on Andor. The bulk of the video was about taking Andor as a positive example, even though I mostly didn't enjoy it. And I got a comment on it recently from someone saying, "How can you not like Andor? It's about fighting fascism." Okay, well, I mean, Remember the Titans is about how racism is bad, and it's still a shitty movie too. Like, just because it has a good message, just because its politics are commendable and important and pertinent, which I've never denied for a second, that doesn't automatically make it a good show. And that doesn't mean I have to like it. Like, if anything, the politics of it make me wish it was better, because it is an important message, especially in today's day and age. It's incredibly important to have a popular sci-fi show that is ardently and overtly and obviously anti-fascist. And it's very heartening to me that a lot of people who enjoyed it a lot more than I did take that message from. Like, I'm very glad that, you know, not everybody felt the same way about the show that I did, and they completely dismissed it. Like, most of the people who really seemed to pick it up and hold it close and champion it also seemed to get the anti-fascist part and see that it was important. So, I mean, I appreciate it for that. But no, just because it's anti-fascist and anti-fascism is good and important, that doesn't automatically make it a good show. The things that I found wrong with the show had nothing to do with its anti-fascism. The anti-fascism is one of the good things. It's the fact that it's got way too many episodes and way too little story, and most of the characters are boring, and most of the stuff that it asks us to watch is stuff that we don't need to be fucking watching. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I'm glad that we both, even though you seem a lot more vitriolic on it than I do, but I'm glad that we agree that Andor was, creatively speaking, was not nearly what it was cracked up to be. Just Mike. Okay, Steve, still no on space aliens. Got it. Kind of stern look from you, which I appreciated. Thanks. People do change their minds. Even you, I have heard. No better than to ask about God. Thank the Lord. How about ghosts? Honestly, don't know how you feel about them. Go explain it to me, please. So, I don't believe in God, but you think I might believe in ghosts? I mean, I guess there are some people. There's the spiritual, not religious people, I guess, who don't necessarily believe in God, or at least don't believe in any of the sort of established major religion versions of God. They don't believe in, the monotheistic God of Christianity or Judaism or Islam, but they might believe in spirits and souls. No, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in gods. I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe in fucking unicorns. I don't believe in werewolves. I don't believe in vampires. And sorry, Tinkerbell, I do not believe in fairies. No, I don't. I almost said something really condescending just there, and I'm going to pull back. And I'm not going to say it because I'm going to try to be the bigger person. I'm not going to say what I was about to say. But no, to answer your question, thank you for the question. And respectfully, no, I do not believe in ghosts. Some random geek who today is just some random geek. Well, some days are like that, my friend. Just one question today, but first, a reminder, if you have extra money, please consider giving it to Joanna, Phoenix, Nas, LQ, and or Joey. Check out charitylinks.page 2. Yes, indeed. Always good to remind people of that. Now to my question. My friend Owen McDonald, great person, has a YouTube channel. I've been on it several times. You were on one of his streams. Yes, I was. You and him became instant friends, loving the same great HBO shows. Owen is a feminist and a socialist who loves having conversations with people. While he has no problem getting in contact with left-wing people, he loves to have conversations with right-wing people. Yeah, I don't know why either. But he sometimes finds people like Warcorp 666, or as he is known now, the Lord of Patriarch. How can you have a worse name than Warcorp 666? Oh, that's how. Fascinating to talk to. Granted, he doesn't agree with right-wing folks. He does push back and argues with them, but he is having trouble finding other right-wing people to talk to. Do you know any right-wing people Owen McDonald can sit down and have a stream with? Well, unfortunately for Owen, but very fortunately for me, no, I don't. Because I don't associate with such people. I don't have anyone that I can recommend for Owen to talk to, because I don't have anyone like that I do talk to. And I make every effort not to talk to people like that, because even though I agree with you, Owen is a great guy. I love Owen. I had a really great time on his show. I would go back on his show anytime he asked me to. But no, I don't get I don't get the value of talking to right-wing people either, especially right-wing internet people, especially people like War Corps. What I do not get the value of that to Owen as an individual or to anyone who might be watching. I personally think it's a waste of time. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to Owen, who I respect a great deal, but I just don't get it. I don't get it. So no, I do not have anyone I can recommend. Eric Hawk, this has probably been asked before, but maybe the answer is different this time. How many wigs and or other costume accessories have you accumulated at this point? How much space is dedicated to storing said artifacts? I feel like I hadn't seen the wig from Mama's Boy before, but I could be mistaken. No, you're right. The Mama's Boy wig was new, the sort of bowl cut wig that I wore for the Mama's Boy character. That was new. And maybe half a dozen wigs altogether now, maybe 7 or 8 actually, now that I think about it. And you know, some shirts and ties and jackets that I got specifically for video stuff, and you know, Star Trek costume pieces that I got for the Starfleet Jobs videos. It takes up a good bit of my closet now. Yeah, I can't give you exact figures, but the storage does take up a good bit of my closet. I'm eventually going to have to clean out one of the other closets in the house and just make that the costume closet, because it is definitely taking up space where I also store my regular clothes that I wear on a normal basis. I am going to have to rearrange things here at some point before too long. But yeah, I have accumulated quite a few costume pieces for videos. The dedicated DC enthusiast. Follow up from my question last Ask Away, where you said you just saw some Supergirl and all of Superman and Lois. Is it mostly just your schedule or lack of interest about the other DC shows? Personally, I like The Flash for the most part, although it does go downhill the last few seasons post-COVID. It reminds me a lot of Superman the Animated Series or Superman and Lois instead of the broody Arrow, and I think you'll like it too. Yeah, it's just schedule. It's not lack of interest. If I had the time, I would love to watch all of those CW DC shows all the way through, because I even the ones that didn't seem like they were that great, like I enjoyed the tone and the vibe of them. I just like goofy superhero stuff, and that definitely fits the bill. No, so yeah, it's just a matter of time. There's only so much time to watch things. I don't want to just watch superhero stuff. I would like to keep my palette at least somewhat varied and diversified as far as like the things I watch. So I want to make sure that I'm not just watching only Star Trek stuff or only superhero stuff. I want to watch quote unquote real movies and real shows. And I want to watch stuff that I'm, you know, not going to be making videos about, stuff that I just watch for my own, you know, entertainment or my own enlightenment or whatever. And yeah, it's just, there's only so much time to watch so many things. So unfortunately, most of the CW DC shows have been on the back burner. Debbie, both my husband and I are retired. We depend on our Social Security and Medicare as so many others do. Since Trump is again at the wheel, we are at a place where we have been counting on for our medical cover, where what we have been counting on for our medical coverage is in jeopardy with Trump. We are not alone worrying about Social Security and Medicare. It is a scary position for all seniors, the disabled vets, or children in need of any medical help that depends on the government. We worked and paid in our taxes, so when we do retire, we can still survive. No matter what you are told when you are younger, how retirement is so fun, they lied. What hasn't been removed from your body, your other body parts are waiting to fall apart. So really getting old sucks. However, counting on Trump and his goons to protect what is rightfully ours is scary. Trump has already done so much damage to this country. Do you feel all this protesting is somehow working? I sure hope so. I mean, it does feel, with all of the sort of protests and yelling and angry questioning of Republican representatives and senators in town halls around the country, and protests that have sprung up recently, including, you know, just over the last week or so, protests, and it's not specifically tied to the issues you're talking about, but the protests over the arrest and pending deportation of Mahmoud Khalil. That's encouraging. It's encouraging to see the people rising up. It's encouraging to see the people actually getting angry enough to go out into the street or to go and confront their legislators, confront their representatives, um, protesting around Tesla dealerships, like stuff like that. It 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 feels positive. It feels good. It feels encouraging. I would I hope that it lasts long enough and is able to translate into electoral participation, because as much as the protests are important and as much as hopefully they will have some influence and some effect by themselves, I also think, I really hope all those people protesting are double checking that they're registered to vote and are making plans to vote in the primaries in 2026 um, and beyond, because that's an important component of this too. Voting is not the only thing. It's not voting by itself is not enough, but voting is a absolutely essential part of it. Um, so yeah, I mean, is it working? It's too early to tell if it's working, but I think it is having some positive effect, and hopefully in time that positive effect, along with other related things, will be enough. John Burns, it's interesting. Since Trump arrived at the White House, he needs votes to leave NATO, and I don't think he has them in the House of Representatives. He might have rushed to fill the spots he needed to fill now, because the last time it took a couple of years for him to fill those spots. In the 80s, he was a slumlord and a successful businessman, but in his negotiations to try and make the U.S. bigger, it's as if he's never read any rules. The new axis is Canada, Denmark, and Panama. And of the three, I don't think the U.S. is part of an alliance with Panama, but he can't get out of NATO by himself. Tariffs are merely taxes by other means. One day a month does nothing but damage one's shoes. He thinks bullying works, but you want to be diplomatic. Interesting strategy. Boy, power really does reveal who someone is. Breaking up with Elon is one thing, but what happens when Putin sees him as the fool that he truly is? The Democrats will win the midterms in the House, right? 49.9%. The Democrats should win the midterms in the House, but then again, the Democrats should have won this last election too, and they didn't. The Democrats will win the midterms if they take full advantage of the opportunities being given to them politically by this administration, and if they, more importantly, if they do everything they can to fight for the people during this administration leading up to the midterms, even if they aren't able to actually accomplish all that much because they lack the political power at the moment. They need to be making the case to the American people that they need to be given the political power necessary to make a difference, that they can be trusted with it, not only trusted to not be as bad as the Republicans, but trusted to use it to make things better. If they do that, if they make that case, then yes, I think they will win. But are they going to be good enough at making that case? Are they going to fight hard enough? Are they going to be courageous instead of acting like, as I accused them in an earlier answer to a previous question, acting like cowards, acting like they're afraid of their own voters, Yeah. And what happens when Putin sees Trump as the fool he truly is? Putin sees him that way already. That's part of why we're in this mess, because Putin knows exactly who Trump is, and he knows exactly how to get what he wants from Trump. And that's what he's doing. He's getting what he wants from him. Like, Putin sees exactly who he is. I think that's why Putin likes him. That's why Putin is happy to have him as the president, because he knows that Trump is an easily manipulated fool. Yeah, no, Putin knows exactly who he is. Thomas, do you really believe the Democrat Party can be anything more than a liberal party that serves the interests of the capitalist elite at the detriment of the working men and women of America? Why or why not? Yes, I do. Because political parties go where the votes are, and political parties go where the money is, and political parties travel the path that they feel is the surest path to acquire and maintain power. And if progressives in this country, and this is a two-way street, the Democrats, I've talked a lot about how the Democrats need to do things differently. Progressives in this country, especially people further to the left, they need to do things differently too. They need to realize that they have the opportunity, instead of, demanding that the Democrats do stuff and then not voting for them anyway, whether they do it or not. Progressives have the ability, have the opportunity to take control of the Democratic Party in the same way that people on the far right have taken control of the Republican Party. Progressives and people further to the left further to the left than me, certainly, if they actually participated in the political process, if they actually voted in primaries and voted in the general election reliably every single time and showed that they are a reliable base of support, you think the Democratic Party wouldn't start turning to the left? Of course they would. If they thought that progressives could be relied on for votes and for financial support and to volunteer and to work for campaigns and to phone bank and to knock doors. And I'm not saying that no progressives do that, okay? A lot of progressives and a lot of leftists and even far leftists do exactly that, right? So I'm not trying to say that like nobody on the left ever does anything useful in politics or in electoral politics. Of course they do. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people hold the Democratic Party to a standard that, you know, even if the party were to meet that standard, a lot of those people still would not support them. They make demands and then they don't, it's basically, they make a demand of the party expecting that the party will not satisfy the demand. The demand is just for show. The demand is just to make them feel better, right? If progressive people and leftists in this country put in the work and participated in the process and made the process work for them, they could turn the Democratic Party to the left. Of course they could. Of course they could. Not right away, not in one election cycle probably, but over time, just like has happened to the Republican Party. And again, the Republican Party has been shit for a long time, right? For my entire life and for decades before that as well. But it's gotten a lot worse and a lot more overtly terrible in the last 15 or 20 years. And that's because people on the fringes who for a long time were not participants got involved and they ran for office and they voted and they fundraised and they got involved in the party and they took the party over. And people on the left could do the exact same thing to the Democrats. And God, I wish they would. Because it would be a hell of a lot more effective than what a lot of them are doing, which is mostly nothing. So yes, it is possible. It is possible, yes. And I hope that it happens. I am a huge proponent of them doing just that. Brian Baker, Steve, I was a journalist back in the 80s, and I wanted to say something about modern journalism. When facts are manipulated, democracy dies. Modern news organizations seem to be more interested in clicks and commercialism than spread the truth. Without facts, you can't have truth. And without truth, you can't have a shared reality. The shitification of news has denied a shared reality for everyone. The truth must come out. And I wanted to say that you are doing an excellent job spreading the truth. Freedom of the press used to belong to the person who owned the press. And now it belongs to the people. No question, just my concern and worries. Keep up the good work. I miss Edward R. Murrow. Boy, it's sad that you have to go back so far, isn't it? Well, and a lot of that, what you're talking about, that shitification of news is because, especially in TV news, it's become a for-profit exercise. You know, there are very few nonprofit news organizations of any serious prominence left in the United States now. There are some local and regional newspapers that are nonprofits. There's actually in my area, there's the Baltimore Banner in Baltimore, obviously, that is a nonprofit newspaper that is a competitor to the Baltimore Sun and has recently become a much more prominent and much more important competitor to the Baltimore Sun after the Baltimore Sun was purchased by a right-winger and is no longer seen as like a reliable source of news. And same thing with the Washington Post. Now that, I mean, Jeff Bezos has owned the Washington Post for many years, but just recently he has asserted a lot more influence over it and has really seriously compromised that paper as a reliable source of news. So organizations like the Baltimore Banner that are independent, that are nonprofit, are very important. ProPublica is another one, nonprofit news organization. The news departments at NPR and PBS, again, very important. But a lot of other major news outlets are for-profit entities. And they, yes, as you point out in your question, they do things that are designed to get an audience, not to serve the job of being journalists. And that is a threat to everything. That is literally a threat to everything. It is a threat to democracy. It's a threat to public safety. It's a threat to public health. It's a threat to fucking world peace. I mean, real, honest, accurate, reliable journalism, as you say, creating that shared reality based on facts, based on truth, is incredibly important. And if there aren't enough outlets dedicated to doing that, that throws everything in jeopardy about our society. Wrestling with wrestling. That takes me back. Hello, Steve. I'm one of your, as you stated in your recent presentation, 30 or 40 viewers who enjoy professional wrestling, and I too thought that the heel turn of John Cena was quite well done, although it's just a shame John Cena waited so late in his career to give being a heel a try. Related to this, I must say the final boss, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, saying that he wants Cody Rhodes' soul was weird, out of place, and didn't make sense. This past Tuesday, I saw Queen of the Ring. It's excellent. More people should see movies in theaters. They're worth it once you're there. I recently purchased The Iron Claw. Superb. Steve, my question is, would you recommend some other pro wrestling films like these, non-cheesy? I know The Wrestler is one. What are some others? I mean, there really aren't that many. I haven't seen Queen of the Ring yet. I wanted to go see it the last week after it opened, but I just couldn't find the time to do it. And it'll probably be out of theaters by the time I would have a chance to see it. So I will make a point to see it on streaming, on video on demand, or wherever as soon as I possibly can, because I do really want to see it, but I haven't seen it yet. But I'm glad you liked it. But other than that, and the Iron Claw, which, I mean, you say the Iron Claw was superb. I thought the Iron Claw was very good. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say it was superb, but it was quite good. And yeah, and the Wrestler was great. I loved the Wrestler a lot. Um, but yeah, there really aren't that many serious, like non-cheesy pro wrestling movies. It's not a thing, a sport, a form of entertainment that has attracted a lot of attention from serious filmmakers, despite movies like The Wrestler coming out, 10 years ago now or more than that, and making a splash and getting a lot of, critical acclaim. It still hasn't really been explored as like a serious, as fodder for serious film. So I really can't think of any. I know there was that movie Wrestling with My Family that I think was directed by the same guy who did The Iron Claw, wasn't it? About Saraya Knight's family. I didn't see it, so I can't speak to that. But that, and I don't know how much of a quote unquote serious or non cheesy film it was. But I know that's another one that exists, and I can't vouch for it, but you might be interested in it if you haven't seen it. Yeah, but other than that, I think, it's called Wrestling with My Family. But that's the only one that jumps to mind right now. Ace, I believe that the fundamental spirit and mission of Star Trek is the exploration of the unknown, and the franchise uses that spirit of exploration to reflect human values and experiences. It is thus a cruel irony that the series which best understood the assignment and most focused on the exploration of the unknown, TOS, Voyager, and Enterprise, are not widely regarded as the best of the franchise has to offer. Indeed, while I love them for taking the Trek and Star Trek to heart, I can recognize that their episode hit rate average is lower than TNG or DS9, for example. In your opinion, is this a limitation of the form or just coincidence and luck of the draw on quality of execution by the different shows and creators? Well, first of all, I would quibble with you about throwing TOS into that. I think TOS, despite the fact that it does all that, yes, it has some really lousy episodes, I would not rank TOS as not among the best of the franchise. I think Classic Trek is a fantastic show. Do I personally enjoy it as much as I enjoy TNG or Deep Space Nine? No, probably not. But I don't think it's by it. I would not put it on the same level as Voyager or Enterprise by any stretch of the imagination. But to your question, no, I don't think the quality of those shows relative to TNG or Deep Space Nine has anything to do with the fact that they explored strange new worlds more often than those shows did. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it's a reflection of uh, the priorities of the creators of the shows, the people who are writing and producing the shows, the various um, limitations and priorities and um, demands that were placed on them by the studios for what the shows had to be. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that, you know, the less celebrated shows were the ones that were actually about seeking out new life and new civilizations and doing all the stuff in the voiceover. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Big Steve P. Hey, Steve, got any shows, movies, podcasts, etc. that are not for the channel and you're just personally excited about watching and listening to? Yeah, I mean, just earlier today, I watched the new episode of Harley Quinn, the Harley Quinn animated series, and it's brilliant. I, I mean, I may make a video about it at some point. I feel like at some point I'm going to figure out a way to do a comparison between Harley Quinn and Lower Decks because they both kind of do, like, Harley Quinn does something very much. Harley Quinn does something with Batman and DC Comics in general that is very similar to what Lower Decks tries to do with Star Trek, or at least wants us to think it's doing with Star Trek. But Harley Quinn is just superior in every possible way. Um, and I think there's some point to be made there about why I love Harley Quinn and why Lower Decks is mostly just kind of a wet fart. Um, so I might do a Harley Quinn video at some point, but I'm not watching it for that purpose. I'm watching it because I love it and because it's a really entertaining, really well done show. So that's one. Um, I mean, I watch a lot of movies that I don't make videos about. I do talk about them with Jason on our movie podcast during the pre-show portion that is just for patrons of the podcast. But other than that, I'm not like mining them for content or anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I watch a lot of stuff during the week, and it's hard to think of specific um, things now off the top of my head. But yeah, no, the amount of stuff that I watch, like specifically for videos, is actually a relatively small segment of the things that I watch during the week. Sorry, I can't be more specific. Cast Iron Chaos, Steve, rather than writing another despondent and depressing comment on Boss Twump and his fascist dictatorship, I'd like to offer a meme that may cater to your particular interest. And here is that meme. First, let's take a look at Chief O'Brien again. Look at that forehead action. And then this is the meme. And I think you may have seen this on social media. It's Elon and President Twump. And it says, the Kobayashi Maru. Welcome to the test, people. Although I don't necessarily agree, because this is not a no-win scenario. I can think of several ways that this scenario could still be salvaged. Unlikely though they may be. Brian McKinley, whose bloodlust will come again with the rising of the moon. Hello, Steve. I've been watching Daredevil Born Again. Hey, that's another one I could have said. Daredevil. I've been watching Daredevil. And enjoying it so far. They're definitely drawing some parallels between Kingpin and Trump, but the sad fact is that I'd take Kingpin as president over Trump any day of the week because I think he'd do a far better job. Hell, I'd take Lex Luthor for the same reason. Isn't it sad that we're stuck with the most pathetic and clownish of villains in the real world? We deserve a better class of criminal in chief. That said, what are your thoughts on Daredevil so far? I think it's excellent so far. We're 3 episodes in as we sit here doing this, and I think that it's very good so far. I'm enjoying it. I was a huge fan of it on Netflix. I thought the Netflix Marvel shows were my favorite little corner of the MCU, and I'm glad that Disney has brought them back and is, at least as far, I think they're doing a Punisher thing as well at some point, but that they're bringing them back and doing new stuff with them. And yeah, I mean, D'Onofrio as Kingpin is amazing. He's one of the best villains, one of the best live action comic book villains ever. And yeah, he'd be better than Trump as president, not only because he's more competent and intelligent, but also because, as the show has demonstrated over and over again, he actually has an inner life. Like, he's actually a person with a personality and with insecurities and with wants and feelings, and he's a human being. He's a bad human being. Like he's a bad person who does bad things, but he's a human being. He has depth, which Trump, despite technically being a human being as well, does not have. Trump has no hidden depths. And Wilson Fisk, as portrayed by Vincent D'Onofrio, does. Damian Williams, Anson Mount said he's begging the producers to get Bruce Campbell on Strange New Worlds. How would you like to see the king used? I think he would be great as one of those TOS era bureaucrats that always made things a pain in the ass for the captain. That's really good. Yes, Bruce Campbell would be great as one of those Federation commissioner characters who comes in and thinks he can take charge, but he actually doesn't. He's in over his head, but he's too pompous to admit it. I think Campbell would be great for that. You know what else? Maybe like a washed up hero captain from the previous era. Like maybe he was a starship captain 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and now his once great accomplishments have been dwarfed by those of the likes of Pike, and he's kind of like a fading star now, and he's a little resentful of it. Like that could be fun. That could be a good Campbell character. Because I would love for Bruce Campbell to show up in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That would be fantastic. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, every week I get together with friends to have dinner and watch Star Trek. This is the first time viewing for my friends, and it's been fun and interesting to see their reactions. Over the last few years, we've watched TNG, DS9, Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds, and Discovery. We are currently about halfway through Picard Season 1, but we do not plan on watching Seasons 2 or 3. Rather, I have been coerced to perform Season 2 using finger puppets, and will be using the Unemployed Philosophers Guild finger puppets. Bob Ross, of course, will play the lead role. Anyhow, I was wondering if you care to contribute some dialogue or a gag for the show. I'll even give you a shout out. No. But, thank you for the invitation. And, based on your previous work, I'm sure you can handle it without me. Agent Meister, who knows you don't gotta be Stonewall Jackson to know you don't want to fight in a basement. Peldor Joy, Steve, I rewatched the wonderful and engrossing Inglourious Bastards recently and would like to know which of the following scenes you prefer. The opening with Christoph Waltz's exchange with the French dairy farmer, or the somewhat Mexican standoff between Fassbender, Kruger et al. And the SS Major in the basement bar. If I'm pressed to answer, I would have to go for the bar, if only because it's longer, but at the same time, I can't take my eyes off Waltz, who by all accounts is a really nice guy in real life. I'm assuming you've seen Inglourious Bastards, noted cinephile that you are, and if that's the case, where do you think it stands in the overall Tarantino filmography? High up, low down, or somewhere in the middle? Thank you for reading, and as the Bishop said to the netball team, come on, chums. Of the two scenes, I think I like the opening scene. I like the scene where he's talking to the French farmer with the family hiding under the floor. It's such a great way to begin a movie, and such an atypical way to begin a movie with like an extended tension scene like that. But yeah, yes, of course, I've seen Inglourious Bastards. I saw it in the theater when it first came out. I would rank it pretty high in the Tarantino filmography. I wouldn't rank it at the very top, but I certainly think it's better than the middle. Like, no, I would put Inglourious Bastards pretty high. Yeah, pretty high. I'm not sure exactly what number it would be. I haven't done like a ranking of Tarantino's movies, but I really, really liked it a lot. I think it's some of his best work. The Grumpy Monkey. How now, Steve? You and I are of an age, so no doubt you're aware of The Simpsons. I ate, slept, and drank this show for the first 7 or 8 years it was on, but at some time around the early 2000s, we sadly drifted apart. It was mainly because I discovered newer interests in franchises, but the fact that the writing just didn't seem up to snuff anymore had a lot to do with it too. I've gone back to episodes that came out in the mid to late 2000s. There were 1 or 2 gems, like Gone, Maggie, Gone from 2009, in which Homer tries to figure out how to get Maggie, Santa's little helper, and a jar of poison across a river. And the 2007 movie was fine, I suppose, but a lot of what I have watched ranged from meh to underwhelming. Hats off to Groening and Company for still being able to churn them out after 35 years, but I'm sorry to say that if I ever attempt a rewatch, I probably won't go beyond season 9. What do you think of the current state of The Simpsons? And do you have a favorite character? My favorite character has always been Homer, and Homer is still my favorite Simpsons character. Um, but no, I pretty much agree with you. I still watch it mostly just out of habit and out of loyalty, but it hasn't been, you're right. I mean, probably since about season 9 or 10, maybe even before that, it hasn't been like that can't miss brilliant show week after week. It's always good. Like it hasn't been that for a very, very long time. Um, but yeah, I still it's not terrible. Like it's been a while. So there are occasionally episodes where you're just like, Jesus, like that was a complete waste of time. But most of the episodes are just kind of okay. You know, maybe once or twice a year they'll come out with one that's good enough that you feel like it would have fit in, you know, one of the earlier stronger seasons. Um, but for the most part, it's just kind of okay, you know, I guess like I find it very hard to believe that anybody involved is still doing it because they love the show. I don't feel like there's any real creative drive to keep making it. I feel like they keep making it because Fox keeps paying them to make it. And they're like, might as well take the money while it's here. And I certainly can't fault them for that. Um, but it feels like any real creative drive behind the show has long since gone. And that's not to say that the people making it aren't talented people. I think they are, but it's just, you know, like you said, it's been, you know, fucking thing's been on for 35 years. Like the well is going to run dry at some point, even with the, you know, the greatest comedic writers in the world. So yeah, the current state is okay. And this is another one from Cast Iron Chaos. Now, usually I have a rule that only one question per patron, but the previous question was just a funny animated GIF. So, or GIF, if you prefer pronouncing it the correct way. So I am going to allow Cast Iron Chaos to ask a second question. Actually, I've seen something that may indeed require some thought or examination. Rumors are starting to go around that Trump is looking for an excuse to declare martial law and suspend the Constitution, and thus complete his coup. I'm not sure if this is just a conspiracy theory because it sounds all too plausible. There have been TikTok videos, which should be taken with a grain of salt, suggesting he may be instigating riots and protests this summer, so he'll have an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law. Is this a conspiracy theory or a prediction of what's to come? It's a conspiracy theory, and unless it actually happens, I mean, people who are saying now that they have proof that this is going to happen, I think are engaging in conspiracy theorist thinking. But at the same time, I don't think it's conspiracy theorists to at least speculate that something like that might happen, knowing Trump and knowing the kinds of things he has done and been involved with in the past. It wouldn't surprise me. But then again, it also wouldn't surprise me if he just did it. If he didn't even bother trying to actually provoke riots. If he just said, too many riots, time for the insurrection. Like he could just make up the fact that there are riots happening. He could just say that, and his dopey followers would believe him, just like they believed that Haitian immigrants were eating people's pets. Like he could just make some shit up and say it on TV, and people would be like, yeah, remember when they burned down Portland? You know, everybody remembers that, you know, and he'll just cite some totally non-existent shit and say time for martial law. He might do that. Like there's no saying that he needs to even go through the trouble of literally manufacturing riots in the streets. He could just say that there were riots and then try to do it that way. Simon Moody. I'm sure many of us wish we lived in a better timeline. So with that sort of in mind, if you had the option of living in one of the following settings, enjoying the benefits, aesthetics, general morality and attitudes, technology, and contact/influences of appropriately significant non-human cultures, which would it be and why? Star Trek, your choice of era, B5, Star Wars, or Firefly. I'm keeping Farscape off the list because the norm is hard to get a firm handle on, and for SG1, a normal person would be unaware of what was going on. Right now, more than usual, daydreaming of pleasant what if you existed in such a setting is a key part of staying sane, I think. Well, I mean, Babylon 5, Star Wars, or Firefly they all seem like pretty rough worlds to live in. as good as they may be as entertainment, really Star Trek is the only one where it feels like, at least if you live in the Federation, where it feels like you might actually have a better than average shot at having a really nice life, compared to this world that we live in. With Babylon 5 or Star Wars, I mean, it really depends. With Star Wars, it really depends on which planet you're on, right? Um, and Babylon 5, you know, I think things on Earth, generally speaking, are better in the era of Babylon 5 than they are today. But then there's also like a fascist takeover of the government at one point, which, you know, I don't know if that's going to be enough of an escape for a lot of folks. So I would have to go with Star Trek. I think I've said before, my just recently someone asked, and I think I said it would probably be like the TOS movie era of Star Trek. You know, it seems like a nice calm period, nice time to live on Earth. So I would go with that. Max, hey Steve, I've recently taken a position helping out with the fire recovery in the LA area. Great pay and mucho overtime. On the other hand, mucho required overtime. But considering my financial situation, it's just what I need. Have you ever had a job where you had to sacrifice work-life balance for temporary or future gains? If not, are there circumstances where you would? Are you happy where you are right now, career-wise? I am happy where I am right now, career-wise. At this point, I would really only be moved to sacrifice the work-life balance if those gains were significant. If it was like, I can work my ass off for a given amount of time, and yes, I will have to devote much more of my time to the work than to doing what I would ordinarily want to do. But when I get through it, I'm going to have a life-changing amount of money. Like, I might consider it for that for a certain period of time. But anything short of that, no, I'm happy where I am and what I'm doing now. Um, and no, I've never been in a situation where I felt like I had to sacrifice work-life balance for temporary or future gains. The only like real job that I ever had before I became a professional YouTuber was working maintenance at a truck stop. And it wasn't an all bad job. Like, there were parts of the job that I enjoyed. Um, and I worked it for 5 years, so I must not have hated it all that much. But the pay wasn't great, and I did have opportunities to work overtime, but I almost always said no because, I mean, yeah, a little bit more money would have been nice, but it wouldn't have been nice enough to justify taking more time away from my outside of work life and spending it on work, you know? So whenever I was offered overtime, with very few exceptions, whenever I was offered overtime, I always said no, because I was never put in a situation where they said you have to work extra. You know, they always made it an option, and so I always said thanks, but no thanks. Andy Lawler is getting angrier at and more embarrassed by this regime as each hour passes. Hey, Steve, as usual, trying to keep it light in the face of shrugs, gesturing around vaguely. Favorite desserts? Favorite pie? Dutch apple for me. Favorite cake? Chocolate. Favorite ice cream? A nice simple strawberry? Are you a cheesecake guy? Do you prefer healthier fare like fresh fruit? Do you even have much of a sweet tooth? Thanks. Have a great weekend, everybody, and stay strong. Okay. Favorite pie? Ooh, that's tough. I'm not as devoted of a pie lover as Dana, but I do love myself some pie. Maybe a good tart berry pie, you know, like a blackberry pie or a mixed berry pie, something like that. That's a good one. Or lemon meringue pie. Oh shit. That's a good one too. Favorite cake, red velvet cake. Favorite ice cream. I like ice cream that's got a lot of shit in it, you know? So like cookies and cream, or cookie dough, like chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, or, you know, brownie batter or brownie ice cream, like stuff, ice cream has got stuff in it, you know? Or failing that, to go the opposite direction to make it a little cleaner, just some vanilla ice cream and maybe some chopped fresh peaches, kind of like peaches and cream, but ice cream. Oh, so good. I wouldn't call myself a cheesecake guy, but I do enjoy a cheesecake. I like cheesecake. And yes, I also do like healthier stuff. Yeah, I mean, I before I change my diet a little bit and cut back even more on my calorie intake, one of the things I would eat semi regularly was a bowl of Greek yogurt and frozen berries, like frozen mixed berries. Uh, So not exactly fresh fruit, but, healthier than like, a bowl of ice cream or something. I love that. Yeah. And I do like other sort of fruit based desserts like cobblers and stuff like that. Yeah, I do. I have a sweet tooth, but I like to vary things up. If I'm ordering food from like a restaurant or something and I'm going to get dessert, I won't always get the exact same thing every time. I won't get like the cookie sundae every single time or like the big hunk of cake or whatever. Sometimes I'll get, a fruit thing just to change it up because I do like to vary my dessert palette every once in a while. Yara, would you consider dedicating a video to B'Elanna Torres or Counselor Troy? These are my fave female characters in Trek, and they don't get enough love, in my opinion. Thanks. Yes. In fact, I think I have ideas on my to-do list about. I know I probably have one about B'Elanna that I haven't done yet, and I might have one about Deanna as well. I'll have to go back and check. In the next few days, I'm going to be putting together the topics for the next poll for patrons and members to choose the topic of a future Trek Actually video, and I'll see if I can include a B'Elanna or a Deanna or maybe both related option on the poll since you brought that up. But yeah, I would love to do videos about either or both of those because I agree they don't get nearly enough love, despite the fact that I also have certain issues with them. Siamak, who is more disappointed than surprised, but I am fuming. Greetings, Steve. I hope you're well and able to enjoy some of the weather we've been having in the Mid-Atlantic this week. Personally, I was able to get out earlier this week to sit in a local park and read a book, and just this morning got a breakfast sandwich from a local place a few blocks away. Eggs, sausage, cheese on a Philly pretzel. So good. Oh, man. It does sound good. But here we are. As I write this, Schumer is set to give away the last leverage federal Democrats held. I hate shutdowns, but goddamn it, when is it time to take risks if not now? 2 years ago, maybe? I have little hope that enough Senate Democrats will hold the line. Been calling my senator, but he's been manching in a hoodie. We know people are going to suffer more than needed to these next 4 years, but our leadership has the spine of a weak dead jellyfish and seems unable to grasp that operating by norms the other side shattered is only going to fail for the love of fuck. And as CMAC mentioned in the chat earlier before we actually started the show, this all now belongs in the past tense because officially enough Democrats have said they will vote basically for cloture to avoid a filibuster to advance the bill to the floor that it will pass. And I agree with CMAC. I agree completely. Yes, a shutdown would suck, but what the Democrats who are supporting this, what the Democrats like Senator Schumer don't realize when Senator Schumer says, yes, the bill is bad, but a shutdown would be worse. A shutdown would be temporary. And B, this is something else the Democrats don't seem to get, just on pure bloodless political calculus. If there is a shutdown, the Republicans would own that. The political moment in the country right now is that the people are turning on the Republicans. It's not Democrats that are being yelled at town halls. It's Republicans. It's not Democrats that are making a mockery of the federal government. It's Republicans. It's not Democrats who are firing tens of thousands of veterans and other federal workers for no fucking reason. And as we recently found out, not even saving money. It's not any of that. It's Republicans that are doing that. So just for pure politics, the Democrats should be saying, hey, you know what? If the government shuts down, that's your fault, Republicans. You're in control. You've got the White House. You've got the Senate. You've got the House of Representatives. And yeah, you need a few of us to vote with you to avert a shutdown. Why should we vote for you when you have treated us like nothing but shit for years, when you have given us nothing to vote for? Why should we join you? Why should we give you what you need? Fuck you. That's what they should be saying. All of them. And I've said this since Trump took office. I've said this since Trump won the election. The Democrats in Congress, they shouldn't be voting for any of the Republican stuff. They shouldn't be giving them votes on anything. especially something like this, where, as you said, they could have actually had some leverage. Yeah, no, it's like I said earlier. You said spineless. I said cowardly. It's the same thing. And yes, it's incredibly disappointing. And hopefully, enough Democrats wake the fuck up in time to do something about this. Well, one of the encouraging things is even though enough Democrats did join the Republicans to get this thing through, which is incredibly disappointing, there have also been a lot of very loud, very pissed off Democrats in the Senate and in the House who have been saying, "Don't vote for this," and have been defying the leadership, or at least the leadership in the Senate, um, that were supporting it. So that there is at least something broiling under the level of the leadership in the Democrats that might eventually, hopefully not before too much time passes, might eventually go somewhere. So we'll see. Kara the Tolkien Nerd. Hi, Steve. I talked about the influence of Joseph Pevney, Gene Coon as both writer, executive producer. Do you think that of all the major writers on TOS that DC Fontana is as important as Coon? Because I think her influence cannot be understated. I think it is thanks to her that we have such a rounded picture of Spock. Would like to know your thoughts. Yeah, DC Fontana is at least as important as Gene Coon was. And I think if you compare the episodes where she is the credited writer, I mean, you could make an argument that she was a better writer than Coon, even though I think Coon was a fantastic writer. In addition to his other influences, sort of as a producer on the show, he was an amazing writer of the episodes that he wrote. But DC Fontana was a great writer too. And I mean, she wrote, I think the episode that I chose when I did a video tribute to her after she died some years ago, she wrote the best episode of Star Trek the Animated Series, Yesteryear, which was a Spock episode and is a great episode and a great Spock episode. She was great. And like Coon, she was not only a writer, I believe she was the script supervisor, and she had a lot of uncredited influence on many of the scripts. It was revealed in the 90s, I think, when Harlan Ellison published his original screenplay of City on the Edge of Forever, that one of the last major rewrites to the script before it got to the shooting script of the City on the Edge of Forever was done by Dorothy Fontana. Ellison is still the only credited writer, and Ellison disowned the finished product. He really did not like the episode, as it turned out. And we know that Gene Roddenberry did a rewrite on the City on the Edge of Forever himself, but DC Fontana also did a apparently very substantial uncredited rewrite on the City on the Edge of Forever, and really had a huge hand in shaping that into the episode that it became. And even though Harlan Ellison, as much as I respect him as a writer, Harlan Ellison didn't like that episode the way it turned out, but I think it turned out brilliantly, and it's one of my favorite Star Trek episodes. And not only does he deserve credit for that as the original writer, but DC Fontana deserves a great deal of credit for it as well, for taking an uncredited pass at it and really, really helping to shape it into what it ultimately became. So, I mean, she was incredibly important. She was incredibly talented. She was a great writer. She was a great storyteller. She had great instincts. She was an incredibly positive influence on that show. And yeah, no, you're right. Her influence cannot be overstated. She was brilliant. Ben Douglas. Hi, Steve. One feature of our capitalist dystopia that I find interesting is the public nature of public corporations. If a company is on the stock market, then they spam out a ton of information about their business operations every quarter for everyone to see. You can just type in company name investor relations on Google and get their financial reports and recordings of investor conference calls. You don't even need to be a shareholder. Earnings calls feel to me like the scene where Mbenga and Ortegas are watching Spock arguing with the Vulcan prosecutor. My question for you, have you ever listened to a corporate earnings call, and what are your thoughts about this aspect of the American capitalist system more broadly? I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think if we're going to have publicly traded companies, that it's only right that they have to be transparent to the public. And I mean, the only reason that most of those companies release all that information is because they are legally required to do that, and they should be. So, I mean, I think within the context of the system we have, I think it's a good thing that they're required to do that and a good thing that they do that. I have listened to portions of corporate earnings calls thanks to the fact that I am a wrestling fan and WWE has been a publicly traded company for many years. And of course, I mean, now WWE is part of a corporate conglomerate. But for, decades before that, it was an independent company, but it was publicly traded. It's been a public company since 1999. And as a part of that, it would have earnings calls where Vince McMahon and other top corporate officers would would have earnings calls and would speak with shareholders on the phone. And most of it's really boring, and it's business stuff that I'm not necessarily interested in. But every once in a while, one of the shareholders that would ask a question on the call would be a wrestling fan, and you would have the hilarious spectacle of Vince McMahon, who just wanted to talk business because Vince was desperate to be seen as a serious businessman and not just a wrestling promoter. But in his corporate earnings call, he was forced to interact directly with some fucking dork wrestling fan who had bought enough WWE stock to get in on this shareholders call. And he would ask like wrestling questions to Vince. They would ask stuff like about, the creative on the last show, or why aren't they pushing this wrestler or that wrestler? They would ask like wrestling stuff. And I look back on that now, especially now that, Vince is out of the picture, thankfully, and everybody kind of knows now it's undeniable what a piece of shit Vince is in multiple ways. And I think that good for you, motherfucker. That's what you get. That's what you get. Every once in a while, you have to sit and listen to one of your fucking dork loser fans take up time on your precious business earnings call and force you to talk about wrestling shit that you would rather talk about anything else. But you're trapped. And and the whole world, all your business people have to sit there and watch while your shareholder and realize that your shareholders are in large part a bunch of bumpkin redneck wrestling fans who are just using this as an avenue to get to talk to you about wrestling. Other than that, I haven't had a lot of interest in listening in on corporate earnings calls. Isaiah Taylor. So about the early years of Star Trek TNG, I watched The Child and Where Silence Has Lease in an altered mental state. I'm sure you can guess what that means. And I couldn't help but love just how free the Enterprise D was to just roam the galaxy at will. Sure, there were missions to carry out, but in the first few seasons of TNG, the Enterprise simply just goes where she pleases. It's like we're just fucking around the galaxy looking at stuff, and I like that. I really appreciate the scene in 10 Forward from The Child in which Wesley and Guinan are looking out one of those massive windows and the ship leaves orbit from Odette 11 and goes into warp. I'm also reading a TNG novel from 1992, Chains of Command, in which the Enterprise sometimes ferries dignitaries and ambassadors from different species across the galaxy. It's like they live on a late 80s space cruise ship, and I fucking love it. I love the Enterprise D. It's my favorite spaceship, real or imagined. Thoughts? Well, I see what you're saying about the earlier years where it seemed like the ship was just going wherever it wanted. That was really prevalent in the first season, where, it really seemed like they were just, in fact, I think some of the episodes even ended with Picard saying, well, where should we go now? It's like, motherfucker, don't you know? Don't you have like a schedule? And I think, I think there was an effort as the show grew and matured to kind of settle the premise down a little and make it a little more plausible and make it seem a little more like these people were professionals and they were part of a more organized, that Starfleet was a more organized service that was dispatching ships on very specific missions. And there's nothing wrong with that either. And really, like I always say, it depends on the individual story. And there's no reason why they couldn't have made a really great show where the Enterprise just keeps showing up at planets Like there's no reason why they couldn't have done that, provided that they had enough really good stories about what happens when the Enterprise shows up at those planets to just keep doing that. You know, it would have been a slightly different show tonally and probably stylistically, but there's no reason why they couldn't have done it. Why they couldn't have just made it the show where the Enterprise shows up at random planets every week for God knows what reason, and who cares? We don't care. That's not what the story's about. It's about, here's the Enterprise and here's the people on the planet and what's their problem. Like it could have been that show, but they went another direction with it, and I'm happy with, for the most part, I'm happy with the show we got, but it could have been that as well if they had enough stories to fill out their episode orders every year with that kind of a format. Yeah, and I wouldn't say the Enterprise D is my favorite, but I like the Enterprise D as well. MW Ridra, with all the insane news stories happening right now, I feel like some stories have completely fallen through the cracks. Have you read about the Jonah Bevin situation at all? Apparently, 13 years ago, ex-Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin wanted to adopt a black kid as a political prop, was denied in the U.S., and so basically bought 4 black kids from Ethiopia. Jonah was abused and neglected the entire time, and when he was 13, was shipped off to a place called Master's Ranch, which is a modern plantation where troubled teens are sent to learn a work ethic by basically being slaves. 2 years later, the Bevins shipped him off to a place in Jamaica where he and other kids were beaten daily until the place was shut down. It appears Matt then tried to literally sell Jonah into overseas slavery, but instead, 18-year-old Jonah got away and is now living homeless in the U.S. And that's just a 1,000-word summary. Have you heard of this at all? It's crazy that this is getting so little coverage. I have not heard about any of this. I am learning about all of this for the first time reading your question, and it is wild. That is wild. No, I have not heard any of that. I'm going to make a note to myself to look up some more about this at some point, maybe over the weekend or next week, because that sounds ridiculous. That's incredible. I mean, can I say it surprises me that he was an ex-governor of Kentucky? It's not fair. I'm sure there are many fine Kentuckians who would never, ever, ever countenance such a thing. But no, that's a wild story. And yes, it's wild that it has not gotten more coverage, because I'm hearing about it from you. Glenn H., who will be placing a We Buy Junk Cars card on all Teslas he sees. Good for you. Hey, Steve, I'm going to divert from my usual Star Trek questions and ask you about wrestling. I have not been a wrestling fan since I was 12, but I am fascinated by its attraction. So to make this brief, what do you think makes a top wrestler? What traits are necessary to get the next Macho Man or Steve Austin or Cody Rhodes? What do these wrestlers have that makes them stand out from the also-rans that get maybe one shot in a second card WWE show? As usual, future me will appreciate your response when watching tomorrow. Have a good show. Well, I can only speak for myself as a fan, but to me, I think the two main things are a wrestler has to be at least pretty good in the ring, like as an actual wrestler. They don't have to be the second coming of Lou Thez or Ric Flair or Ricky Steamboat. They don't have to be like an all-time great as an actual in-ring wrestler, but they have to be at least pretty good. They have to be not bad as a wrestler. And the second thing is, whatever their character is, whatever their gimmick, their persona, whether they're a heel or a baby face, whether they're larger than life or more realistic, whatever they are, they need to be able to convince people that they are who they are, right? That they're not just acting a certain way for the show, that they really are. And that's the thing. The Macho Man Randy Savage was a big gimmick. He was a big personality, but you believe that was really him. Like, he wasn't acting. When you saw the Macho Man on TV, whether he was wrestling or whether he was talking, that seemed like that was him. Dusty Rhodes, one of my all-time favorites, father to Cody Rhodes. Same thing, huge personality. The voice, the look, the style. Dusty, well, I mean, he was a huge character, a huge persona, but he was 100% legitimate. You believed every word he said. As ridiculous and huge as he was, as crazy as his personality was, you believed that was really him. And the same, and Cody is the same, although Cody's very different in terms of his presentation. When Cody Rhodes talks, you believe that he's saying you believe he means what he says. When Steve Austin talks, you believe he means what he says. No matter how ridiculous it might be if you took a step back and really thought about it, right? That's not important. When you're watching it, you're not going, this is bullshit. He's acting. She's acting. That's not the way he really is. That's not the way she really is. When you're watching it, you're going, I believe that's who they are. That's incredibly important. So I think those two things are the key to being a top level star. The doer of too many things. This is Dana, everybody. The doer of too many things. I enjoy stories about wee small Steve, and I think a story would be a great way to celebrate the start of the weekend. So what was the most interesting situation that got you in trouble when you were a munchkin? And as a follow-up, since I've still got the characters for it, what was the most interesting situation that you got away with? I hope the weather up your way has been as lovely as it has been down here. Happy Friday. The weather has been lovely. I'm going to keep it short, unfortunately, because this is the second to last question, and I've been answering questions for the entire show so far, so I don't want to go into too long of a story. So I will only answer the second part because that's the interesting story. The most interesting situation that I got away with, because actually it answers the first question too, because I did eventually get into trouble for it. So, okay. My dad had a pool table in the basement in the room that eventually would become my bedroom when I got into high school. It was remodeled and turned into my bedroom. But for most of my childhood and early adolescence, it was just the game room in the basement. And that's where the pool table was. And me and my friends would often shoot pool. And one day after school, me and a couple of friends that lived down the street from me were shooting pool, and one of my friends drew his cue back too far, and he knocked something that was hanging on the wall off of the wall, and it fell to the floor and it broke. And the thing that broke was my dad's Sailor of the Month award from when he was in the Navy. My dad served in the Navy very proudly. He actually served 2 tours in the Navy. He was in the Navy in the 70s, and then he came home and got married to my mom and started a family, and I was born and my brother was born. And then, actually, no, it was before my brother was born. I was born, and then in, I think, 1982, when I was 2 years old, my dad went back in the Navy. And I try not to take that personally, that I was born and he said, you know what, I'm going back in the Navy. But anyway, one of the ships he served on was the USS Guadalcanal. And while he was on the Guadalcanal, 1 month he was selected as Sailor of the Month. And that was like a big deal. And they gave him a plaque. And it was a piece of wood with like a medallion in the middle of it. And when it fell off the wall, I discovered that the medallion was some kind of ceramic or something. And it fell, not only did it fall off the wooden plaque, but it broke into pieces. And I thought, oh shit, now I'm dead. Like, my dad's going to see that even though I didn't break it, it was one of my friends that broke it. Like, I brought him into the house. I brought this person into the house, and they broke my dad's prized Sailor of the Month award. So I thought, I'm going to die. So instead of telling Dad about it, I glued it back together and I hung it back on the wall. And I didn't say a fucking word about it, and neither did anybody else. And I got away with it for 3 years, something like that, 3 years. And when it was discovered was when my dad was taking stuff off the wall to ready the room to be converted into my bedroom. You know, he was taking, because he had like his, you know, his Sailor of the Month plaque and some pictures and stuff that were his. He was taking them down. And as he was taking it down, he noticed that his plaque had been broken. And he said, what do you know about this? And I told him, after 3 years, I told the truth. And he said, why didn't you tell me when it happened? Look at this. This looks like shit. And I was a little insulted. I thought I did a good enough job gluing it back together. I mean, come on, what did I didn't say this, but I felt like saying, come on, dude, I was in a hurry and I was only like 13. I was 12 or 13. I think I did a pretty good job under the circumstances. You didn't notice it all this time, but I didn't say that. So I mean, and I didn't get in trouble. Like he didn't punish me or anything, but he was really upset. He wasn't just pissed at me. He was upset like that his, prized thing had been broken. Um, so yeah, that was something that I both got away with and got in trouble for much later after the fact. And finally, last question from Russell. Hey, Steve. First, I could be wrong, but the format for your Q&A stream, your Q&A seems different, weird. Anyways, and by the way, I think that's a Google thing. They changed the Google form that I use a little bit, so I don't think that was anything I did. I think the Google form just looks a little different, but it's the same. Like it still works. Today's topic, I think you'll love this. Simone versus Sipowicz. Now you mentioned you liked Simone better. My question is why? While I agree with you, he is Andy's best partner, mainly because Andy didn't have to teach him the ropes, so they are equal in that regard. Simone only had 4 years to develop, whereas Sipowicz had the whole show. Plus, Andy, in my opinion, had more to overcome. Think of how he started and where we leave him in the finale. Side quick, not going to make it easy. Aside from John or Donna, who was your favorite PAA? That's my NYPD questions. I will try to stay awake for the stream. Been at work since 4 a.m. this morning, and I am kind of tired. Take care. Favorite PAA other than John or Donna? Probably Gina, the one who eventually married James. Or some of the short-term ones like Jerry and Dolores, I think were both great characters, but they were only in the show very briefly and were basically just there to eventually get connected to one of the crime stories. But I like both of them as well, but probably Gina. And why do I like Simone better than Sipowicz? Well, I mean, Jimmy Smits just has such an intensity as Bobby. I mean, obviously, Dennis Franz has intensity as Sipowicz as well, and Sipowicz is an amazing character. And you're right, he does have a great character arc that carries through the entire show, as opposed to just a few seasons with Bobby. But I don't know when Simone when Simone would get angry, because Simone was like Simone of the two partners, Simone was the good guy. Simone was the decent guy. Simone was the guy who wasn't, the racist, who wasn't the guy with the short temper who beat up suspect. Simone was the upstanding good cop, right? He was like the fairy tale. He's the good cop. He's an upright, righteous, moral, decent guy, the kind of guy that we would like to think that cops really are in real life, even though that is, very often not the case. So I like that about him. And I liked when he would get intense, when he would get mad, when he would be pushed by a case or by a suspect. And I felt like Smits as an actor really shined in those moments. Even more so because you didn't get them from Bobby as often as you got them from Andy. Andy was always pissed about something. Bobby was always the one who was trying to maintain control and trying to control himself. So when Bobby lost it, when Bobby got mad, you knew that shit was on. And I mean, his ending, his last episode, like his ending is absolutely heartbreaking. It kills me. It moves me to tears to this day when I watch it. It's hard. It's one of the few episodes of TV or movies even where not only is it sad, not only does it break my heart, it's actually hard for me to watch. It's so sad and so wrenching. It is hard for me to watch Jimmy Smits' last episode as Bobby. Like technically not his last episode, because he does come back for that one episode in the last season, but his last episode as a regular. It's hard for me to watch because it's so good and because it's so sad and because it's so beautiful. It's one of the best things that's ever been on television. And I think that reflects on Bobby and on Jimmy Smits. So those are some of the reasons why, if you make me choose, I would say I prefer Simone to Sipowicz. But between the two characters, you can't really make a wrong choice. That's it for the questions. Before I turn my attention to the live chat for the rest of the show, you know what time it is. At least you do if you've watched these live streams before. It's time to premiere a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. So please take the next minute or so and relax and enjoy a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. It will go live as a standalone YouTube short on this channel tomorrow, but because you have the good fortune and good taste, I must say, to be watching this show right now, you get to see it right now before anybody else. So here is a brand new Stuffy and Friends short. So you're gay, right?
Among other things.
But what's that mean?
It means I'm mostly into other blokes, but if I ran across a bird who struck me fancy, who also fancied me, I wouldn't kick her out of bed. Or wherever.
Why the sudden interest in Jack's sexuality?
Aye, what's it to you?
I just find it interesting. Jack identifies as gay, but he also basically just said he'll fuck anyone who will fuck him. I think it's cool how open-minded he is.
Meaning what? Other gay fellas aren't open-minded.
Some of them aren't. Just like lots of hetero people, it's not a gay-only or a straight-only thing. I've heard some bisexual people say that they feel rejected by the gay community and the straight community because they're looked down on for refusing to choose a side. You don't seem bothered by that.
Of course not. I didn't join the bloody army. It's just the way I am.
I admire you so much. Living your truth the way you do, you're so brave.
Applesauce.
What? Really? Okay. Sorry, Jack.
What the hell is that?
The code word.
When he starts to sound too much like a condescending white liberal, I say applesauce, and he knows to dial it back.
It's a good system. I got carried away. I guess the reason I find Jack's sexuality so fascinating is because mine is so simple, you know? Like, I'm a 0 on the Kinsey scale, just 100% hetero.
Except for Henry Simmons.
Except for Henry Simmons, right.
And Ben Affleck.
And Ben Affleck, but those are the only exceptions.
And the Wheatley vodka guy.
I said I was hetero, I didn't say I wasn't human. Wheatley, so good I drink it neatly. Hope you enjoyed that one. I thought that was a self-praise is cheap praise, but I thought that was a pretty good Stuffy short there. All right, let's see what's going on in the live chat. Hello, everybody. Applesauce, yeah. We have it's not necessarily a safe word. That's a different context. It's a code word. It's a knock it off. You know, it's the white liberal overload alarm. Dana says, what about Matt Damon? I got nothing against Matt Damon. But I've always been more of an Affleck guy. Some random geek, can you use applesauce? I sure. Yeah, sure. Isaiah says, also the early TNG seasons were trippy with the music and visuals. Man, I love 80s TV. Very ethereal. My fave is where no one is going for. You know, Isaiah, I'm glad you mentioned that. The Star Trek video that I'm shooting tomorrow for next week, the March Trek Actually video, is about season 2 of TNG and why, in my opinion, season 2 of TNG is a lot better than its reputation suggests. And one of my main points is that, more so than some of the later seasons, season 2 was not afraid to get weird. Like, there were some weird episodes in season 2 of TNG, and not all of them were really good episodes, but even the ones that weren't so good were interesting because they were so bizarre and so odd. And I really like that. So yes, we have that in common, I think. Trying to 1701 says, what are your thoughts on the disgraceful deletion of links on the Arlington websites for Black, Hispanic, and female service veterans buried at the cemetery? Well, you just said it. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. And it shows how utterly ridiculous this whole obsession with DEI is. You know, like anything that has any level of celebration or commemoration or singling out in a positive way of Black people, brown people, women, queer people, anything that's, you know, tries to do anything good for marginalized people is going to be smashed and taken away. And it's ridiculous. It's hateful and it's ignorant and it's destructive and it's terrible. Air One Fire says, new lore just dropped about Jack from Stuffy and Friends. Well, I mean, sort of. We've known since previous versions of the show that Jack was gay. I don't know if I've ever established that he was sort of gay plus, that he was gay, but also he was open to other experiences. But we've known that he was gay for a while. 255 AD says, do you ever get the vibe people on the very far left act like we have some sort of enlightenment that people further to the center lack? Like we think libs just don't know better. Yes. Yes, I do. Ronnie San, at this point, I'm protecting my dad's Marvin Gaye records. Yes, yes, don't let anybody know that you have them. Steve Schmeling says, so your dad encountered your terrible twos and thought, surely there's a war going on somewhere. Yeah, pretty much. He said, you know where I hear is nice right now in the early 80s? Lebanon. I wonder if I can join the Navy again and get them to send me to Lebanon. Shreyas Srivastov, really enjoyed your Cap 4 review vid. Myself, I thought it was decent. Are there other MCU movies, shows post-Endgame that you feel similarly to Cap 4? Any improvement ideas for the MCU? I mean, there are several post-Endgame MCU projects that have gotten underwhelming reviews that I have thought were either pretty good or excellent. Actually, Dana and I did a watch-along of The Marvels last year because we both thought The Marvels was excellent. And a lot of people like The Marvels, but, it sort of was perceived as not being good or being some kind of a commercial failure or something. But I thought The Marvels was terrific. What was another one? The second Doctor Strange movie, even though it kind of contributes to the multiverse thing, which doesn't really do it for me as a big, ongoing story. But as a movie, just in its own right, I thought Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was very good. And it was neat to see Sam Raimi get to direct an MCU movie and kind of give some of his personal style to an MCU movie, which I do think, not just his personal style, but the personal styles of various directors. I do think that the franchise as a whole could use some more of that. That might be something I would suggest when you say any ideas to improve it. More differentiation in the individual styles of the movies, allow individual filmmakers to make their movies as opposed to, having them try to fit their style in with some kind of broader house style. I think that would be a good idea. Focus on making good movies, good individual movies, and make how this individual movie fits into the larger universe a secondary project. 25AD says, I said I don't want to win by doing what Third Way want. I should have said I'd rather try to win by pushing for a progressive change, even if they're right, and that might be more risky. No, I agree. I think that's what we should do too, is push for progressive change. Cast Iron Chaos, The Martian plus Saving Private Ryan equals USA spends way too much money rescuing Matt Damon. And don't forget Interstellar as well. Member message from Kirok. I can think of a few episodes where Bobby loses his shit. One, Lost Israel, where he says, I hope he burns in hell, or that rapist turned murderer that attacked Diane undercover. In that case, Andy had to play. The one I always think of, play a good cop and keep the calm cop. I agree. The one I always think of is the episode where it's the suspect is like a racist, and Bobby goes into the box with him, and it's after they've gotten enough evidence that they know this is the guy, and they know that they can arrest him and send him off to trial or whatever. And Bobby takes a minute alone with the guy, and this guy, he's like a white supremacist or something, and Bobby informs this racist white guy of Bobby's own like mixed race heritage. And how I think his mother was from Belize, and I can't remember if his father was from Puerto Rico or whatever, but he has like a mixed race heritage, and he's explaining this to the the guy, the racist white guy assumed that Bobby was Puerto Rican or assumed that he was Mexican or something, and Bobby said, no, actually I'm not. I'm this is my heritage, and I can't remember specifically what he said. And then the racist white guy tries to blow him off and says something like, yeah, what do I care? And Bobby gets in his face. And like, again, he's not really yelling, but he's very intense. And he says, I just thought you would like to know the background of the mongrel who just arranged your future for you. Ooh, God, I love it. Anyway, that's one of my favorite Bobby moments. Oh, Sentai Ranger Donnie says, I must go now. Thank you, Steve, and all. Have a great weekend, and may you and yours live long and prosper. Thank you very much, my friend. Have a good weekend. Maggie Sermonara, pork chops and apple sauce. Isn't that swell? D Notive says season 2 of TNG also gave us Pulaski, and she has a really pronounced arc from where the season starts and where it is. Yes, and I mentioned Pulaski in my upcoming video as well. And of course, I did a whole video about Dr. Pulaski arguing that she deserves more appreciation than she often gets. Daryl Lett says, have you ever crossed paths with someone who was so orthodox progressive that they scared even you? Not really. No, not really. Darth Eddie says, there aren't many great season 1 episodes, but the Neutral Zone is one of them, and the freshman season ends on a high note. You know, actually, I was looking back on season 1 as I was writing my season 2 video earlier this week, and beginning with Skin of Evil, which I think is with what, maybe 4 episodes to go. And Skin of Evil, for me, which is the episode where they kill Tasha, and unfortunately they kill Tasha, but that's a good episode. And that I've always sort of looked at as the start of the climb creatively, where the show started to just inch up a little bit. Like, it didn't immediately become a good show, but it started to get noticeably better. And if you look at the last few episodes of season 1, beginning with that one, going through to the Neutral Zone, it's noticeably better. Like, it's still not like a great show or even really a good show, but it's noticeably better. That's the phase of the season, that last portion where you also get We'll Always Have Paris, which, again, not a great episode, but a pretty good episode. And yes, as you say, the Neutral Zone, which, again, especially for season 1, is a pretty good episode. So yeah, that last sort of smattering of season 1, there is some not amazing but noticeable improvement. CMX says, earlier you said something. Have you never attended a protest? If not, regardless of the current abject heart, I highly recommend the experience and energy. The only protest I've ever attended, I went to the Women's March in 2017, which was like right after, it was after the first Trump inauguration, wasn't it? It was after the first Trump inauguration. I went to the Women's March, and I mean, talk about a first street protest. I mean, my God, there were like 1 million people there. It was amazing. But yes, I did go to that. I don't think I've gone to one since. But no, and it's not that I wouldn't go to another one. I definitely would. It's just, it's a matter of wanting to go bad enough and being able to go and that kind of thing. John Stewart said, if you had a chance to do something for Star Trek aside from all you do now, what would your pitch be? Movie, TV series, novel, comic, whatever. Well, as far as like movie, TV series, or whatever, if the format made a difference, it would be whatever allowed me to tell whatever story I had in mind the way the most of the way that I wanted to tell it, If all of them were options and the best way to get the story that I wanted to tell told was as a comic book, then that's what I would want to do. But my very general pitch for a Star Trek TV series that I came up with, and again, I haven't like come up with anything beyond the very bare bones concept of it. But the idea for a Star Trek TV series would be to do a much more literal version of Star Trek as Wagon Train. It would be Wagon Train to the stars, and that would literally be the show. And where it would be the hero ship would be leading either a group of colonists on the ship, or maybe like a small fleet or a small convoy of colony ships from like Earth to way, 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 way out on the outer edge of explored territory to found a new colony out in the frontier. And the journey would take the entire season. And which is what the actual show Wagon Train was. Every year they were leading a new wagon train from the east out west, and each individual episode would be stories that happened to characters in the wagon train along the way. But the arc of the season was they start, in Independence, Missouri, or wherever they were in the first episode, and the end of the season they get to California or to Oregon or wherever they're going. And then the next season starts back east and they start west again with a new group. And that's what my Star Trek show would be. It would be every season would be a new group of settlers going to some far off planet, and the heroes, the regulars on the hero ship would be the ones that were leading this group of colonists, and they would meet with trouble and adventures along the way. And I think that would be a really good format, not just to tell great sci-fi adventure stories, but also you can use that as an allegory for colonialism, imperialism, all sorts of things that could still stand to be critiqued in popular culture. So I don't know who any of the characters are. I don't know what the ship would be called. I don't know how many episodes I would want to do a year. I don't have any specific stories in mind, but the general premise of my Star Trek show would be that it would be literally Wagon Train to the Stars. I don't even know what I would call it, but that would be the idea. Let me see here. Oh, Steve Schmeling says, on a side note, Kevin O'Leary is a rich, out-of-touch asshole. Yeah, he kind of is, huh? And you know what pisses me off about Kevin O'Leary? To bring this back to wrestling, Kevin O'Leary has the gall to call himself Mr. Wonderful. And as any wrestling fan knows, the only Mr. Wonderful was Paul Orndorff, who wrestled Hulk Hogan in front of 60,000 Canadians. And I know Kevin O'Leary is a Canadian. Wrestled Hulk Hogan in front of 60,000 Canadians at Exhibition Stadium in August of 1986. That is the real Mr. Wonderful. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Not this Kevin O'Leary asshole. Fuck him. Calling himself Mr. Wonderful. He's not fit to shine Paul Orndorff's fucking shoes. Yeah. Oh, Dana, thank you for saying you like my story. I appreciate it. Let me go back through the chat here and see what else I missed. Shrivastav says, I don't know if you're a Looney Tunes fan, but I'm checking out the movie The Day the Earth Blew Up tomorrow. I hope more people support that, and it may bring back Coyote versus Acme from Zaslav's clutches. I would like to see that too. I've gotten I've seen reviews of people who have seen it, who have seen The Day the Earth Blew Up, and some of the reviews are really, really positive and really high on it. I've also seen some clips from it that didn't seem all that funny. And a lot of the more modern Looney Tunes stuff has not really worked for me. Some of it has, I'm not saying like all of it's been bad, but it hasn't really clicked with me a lot. But I do want to see the new movie. I do want to give it. I love that it's Daffy and Porky, it looks like. That intrigues me. Not that I don't love Bugs, because I love Bugs, but Daffy and Porky is a really funny team. And Daffy's my guy. Steve Schmeling says, what are your thoughts on Bill Maher? I think he's smart and funny, but he's very smarmy and behaved like everything would be better if we all listened to him. I agree with you, except for the parts where you say he's smart and funny. I used to be a fan of his, but he wore thin with me. He wore thin with me. And a lot of it is because of what you say. He acts like everybody, the world would be better if we all listened to him. And he's really condescending and really dismissive of stuff that isn't important personally to him, and therefore he doesn't see why anybody else should care about it. So yeah, I used to be kind of a fan, but not for many, many years. And also, like, he's kind of anti-vax, or at least he was for a while. I don't know if he's tried to walk that back more recently, but for quite a while, he was kind of kook. He was kind of a kook for, scientific and medical shit. As much as he tries to paint himself as like a skeptic, he was embracing some kind of, kooky, quacky ideas about vaccines and medicine. The real Kai Muse says, what intriguing theme that Trek introduced but never followed up on would you like to see picked up in an episode or series of episodes? I would like to see it engage more seriously with the inherent flaws in Starfleet and the Federation. They have touched on that in the past. Deep Space Nine kind of played with it a little. The Picard show kind of touched on it, especially in the first season with the, the synth ban and all that. But they always found a way to write it so that they could frame the failure of Starfleet or the failure of the Federation as like a short-term thing, or the result of just a few people acting badly or manipulating events or something. And they never did it in a way that reflected badly on the institutions themselves. And I think that the greatest importance and the greatest use in storytelling of things like Starfleet and the Federation is as metaphors for our modern society, for the United States, for Western civilization in general. And as some random geek will no doubt tell you, there are lots of very serious problems with the United States as a country, with Western civilization as a project in general, that cannot just be shrugged off as the result of a small number of misguided people. There are certain problems that our society has that are a lot deeper and a lot more systemic than that. And it would be nice to see Star Trek seriously engage with that and say, look, it doesn't mean we should throw the whole thing away. It doesn't mean that every single thing about our society is bad. And it certainly doesn't mean that the Federation in its fictional utopia is not better than our real world in a million different ways, but it still has really serious shortcomings that need to be addressed and not just waved off as, well, everything was perfect except for these few people over here that kind of fucked things up for a little while, but now it's perfect again. Like, that to me doesn't seem useful as a storytelling element for a show like Star Trek that uses the science fiction as a way of telling stories about the here and now, which is what Star Trek has always done, and what I hope it continues to do. So I would like to see that, not just sort of teasing the idea of the Federation having some fundamental flaws that need to be addressed, but actually seriously engaging with that and treating it like more than just, well, it was an evil admiral, he was the responsible one, or, oh, people were just misled by these secret agents that infiltrated Starfleet. Like, no, it needs to be deeper than that. It needs to reckon with the fact that their society, as elevated and, as evolved as it is, still has really serious problems. I would like to see something like that. Trying to 1701 says, I would like to see if you could do a Trek series like Franz Joseph wanted, following different ships through the series, Starfleet instead of Star Trek. I mean, that might be fun to do like an anthology series. Yeah. And again, I mean, that would, you would think that would address one of my problems with the current generation of the franchise, which is that it leans too much toward the serialized stuff and not enough toward episodic stuff. Like, of the new live action shows, the only one that has really embraced episodic storytelling is Strange New Worlds. And it's also by far the best of the new shows. and, you know, a show that focused on different ships in the fleet and was an anthology show, so you got a different standalone story with different characters every episode. I think that, you know, that would be really interesting. And hopefully that would be a way of focusing on the story, you know, as opposed and a different story every episode, as opposed to trying to do like a single story stretched out across 10 or 13 or 15 episodes. Daryl Lutz says, okay, Steve, what's your favorite ending to the statement? You know, you're getting old. I like, if you can remember when all the rock and roll was on AM radio instead of FM. Wow. See, I'm not that old. You know, you're getting old when the era of pro wrestling you're nostalgic for was before the Attitude Era. I think that's the one for people my age. That's the one for people my age. Wrestling fans for my age. 255 AD says, what would you do if you went for a walk at a battlefield and there were a bunch of lost cause freaks doing some sort of event there? Would you confront them or just avoid them? No, I would avoid them. I would not ruin my day by starting a fight with a bunch of assholes who were there, you know? Boxy Brown says, what's wrong with the Federation? I mean, for the most part, nothing. I think that's one of my, you know, that's one of my issues with it. You know, it's too perfect. And whenever there is a problem with it, again, it's a very short-term limited thing. Steve Schmaling, you know you're old when you ogle a Playboy centerfold born the year you graduated high school. Ooh, that's a good one. What about, I thought about this the other day. When the celebrities, when the most famous celebrities go from being older than you to being younger than you. Yeah. I realized the other day, somebody mentioned, apparently she mentioned this when she was on Saturday Night Live. I haven't been keeping track, but Lady Gaga is 38. And in May, I turned 45. So I was like, oh man, I'm older than even celebrities like Lady Gaga who have been around for a while now. You know? And that was a moment I was like, oh boy, I'm getting old. I'm older than most of the really famous celebrities. Isaiah says, my favorite season 2 episode is Times Squared. The child is creepy, but in a weird cringe way. Troy gets raped by a light emitting diode. Yeah, I remember that one. And the child was the season premiere. Not a very good way to start the year. Yeah, Times Squared is a good. That's one with the two Picards. That's a good, and that's another one that's kind of weird. Caitlin says, what was your opinion on Biden's speech announcing the Gaza ceasefire, specifically the part where he repeatedly said it would have never happened if he hadn't continually armed Israel, that it validated his conviction in arming Israel? I mean, I disagree with that part. I mean, the problem with it was, look, the ceasefire was good because it was better than nothing. It was better than what had been happening up until then. And I do give Biden credit for making that happen. But you can't overlook the fact that it happened after everything that happened before it, much of which was enabled by Biden arming Israel. Like Biden realized that something needed to change, that what Israel was doing was wrong, but he also didn't want to ever admit that what Israel was doing was wrong. He didn't ever want to call out Israel for doing the wrong thing, or at least not call them out too harshly. And he didn't want to admit that he had done anything wrong by continuing to support Israel. So whatever moral impact he hoped the announcement would have is kind of lost, because even though he and his people helped to engineer a ceasefire, which was good, he never, at least publicly, never accepted responsibility for the role he played in enabling Israel to devastate Gaza to the degree that it has. And I feel like if he wanted credit for the ceasefire from me, he would have at least had to do that. He would have at least had to acknowledge that he should have done more to stop this earlier, and that he should have done more in the way of putting pressure on Israel to stop, because it was clearly Israel doing most of the killing after October 7th. Like, I don't see how any reasonable person can deny that. It was an incredibly, and it still is, I don't want to speak about it in the past tense, it's an incredibly lopsided, quote unquote, war. I mean, it's way out of balance, and Israel has been in the dominant position the entire time, and Biden helped to make that happen. He continued to arm Netanyahu even after it became obvious what was happening, even after the International Criminal Court ruled that Netanyahu was committing war crimes. When the International Criminal Court ruled that Putin had done war crimes a few years before, Biden said, yeah, right on, go International Criminal Court. Fuck Putin. Yeah. International law must be respected. But when that same court said that Netanyahu had been committing war crimes, Biden said, hey, wait a minute. Oh, the court's wrong. What? The court's out of its mind. Why? It's so unfair. They can't say that. Like, either we're supposed to respect international law or we're not. We can't say that international law is valid and to be respected when it comes down on our enemies, and then completely reverse when it comes down on one of our friends. So no, I mean, I was grateful for the existence of the ceasefire, but I would be much more disposed to give Biden credit for it if he seemed willing at all to acknowledge the wrongness of his participation in the events that led up to it. 255 AD says, assuming we still have elections in 4 years, should Tim Walz run? Yes. Someone mentioned Chris Pine. Lesser Than None says, for me, Chris Pine is perpetually 25. Neither of us is 25 anymore. Yeah, that's another one that I could say, when the young Captain Kirk is now the middle-aged Captain Kirk. Like, oh, Chris Pine, the young Captain Kirk. Is he, though? Not anymore. I mean, compared to Shatner, he still is, but is he? People are talking about D&D in the chat. I feel like I'm just going to have to start banning people. You motherfuckers don't take me seriously enough. Like, I'm just going to have to start dropping the hammer. Darth Eddie, Chris Pine is now almost as old as Shatner was when he filmed. Yes, that's true. Caitlin says, it's so weird to me that Chris Pine was only like 2 or 3 years younger in the first film than Shatner was in TOS. By the third film, he's way older than Shatner was in season 3. Yeah. Dana says he has a better skincare routine. I think every movie star has a better skincare routine today than they did back in the 60s and 70s. some random geek, don't pull the trigger quite yet. Hold back. Don't be banning people for D&D stuff. But I just like to put the threat out there. I like to rule by fear. Hey, Joanna says, hey, I just came in. What are you guys talking about? Well, I'm about to start talking about winding down the show. I think it's about time to start ending the stream. But I want to mention, because Dana said about, Chris Pine has a better skincare routine. You know what else? And I feel like I've talked about this before. Maybe I've talked about it with Jason. It's not just that like movie stars today have better skincare routines and that kind of stuff, or have, better makeup and whatever. Movie stars today are like all fucking jacked. Like men and women, but especially men, especially like men from their teens and 20s up through probably their 50s or even their 60s, depending on what kind of roles they're playing. But like if you look at movies back in like the 50s and 60s and 70s, and even in the 80s, right? Like I was watching No Way Out, the Kevin Costner movie with Gene Hackman and Sean Young, right? That was 1987. And Kevin Costner and Sean Young have some love scenes in that. And you see Kevin Costner without his shirt on, and he just looks like a normal fit guy, right? He's slender and he's in good shape, right? But he's not fucking jacked. He doesn't look like he goes to the gym every day. He doesn't have like rippling biceps and a massive chest and six-pack abs. Like he just looks like a normal dude who's in good shape, right? If that movie was today, he would be fucking jacked. He would have fucking veins down his arms. He'd have like popping biceps. His chest and his abs would be sculpted, right? Like, because that's just the standard. Like if an actor, especially a dude, is going to be seen with his shirt off in a movie, he's got to be not just in decent looking shape like a normal person. He's got to be fucking jacked. That is a standard that was not in place in decades past, and now it is the standard. Like, compare Chris Pine with his shirt off in the Star Trek movies to William Shatner with his shirt off in the TV show in the 60s. We're like, Shatner was not in bad shape at all, but he was in normal guy shape. He wasn't like fucking jacked. And now Chris Pine in the Kelvin timeline Star Trek movies, fucking jacked. Anson Mount, same thing. You see Captain Pike with his shirt off, or even with his shirt on, you can tell he's got something going on under that shirt in Strange New Worlds. Dude is fucking jacked. So anyway, Simon Moody, Chris Pine looks like he ate a bodybuilder. Oh boy. Stephen Clenard with a member message. You know you're old when you're older than Captain Picard was when TNG premiered. Yes, that's true. Patrick Stewart was not yet 50 years old. I'm creeping up on that myself. Like I said, I'll be 45 this year. I'm almost there as well. Oh, hey, Bruce. Good to see you. I'm ending the show, but it's good that you made it. It's good to see you. It's been a while. All right. If anybody has any final questions, go ahead and throw them in the live chat, but I'm going to take a few minutes here and wrap things up, do my usual end of stream spiel, and then I'll take a few final questions, and then we'll call an end to the stream. So first of all, thank you all so much for being here, for watching, for asking so many awesome questions, for being supporters of this channel in whatever ways you happen to be, even if you're just here watching and, giving the stream a like and sharing it, or, participating in the chat, what have you. If you enjoy this YouTube stuff that I do and you would like to help me to continue to do it, you can become a supporter of this channel by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or by clicking the join button right here on the YouTube page to become a channel member. If you do either one of those at any level of support, from $1 a month on up to whatever you feel like giving me a month, whatever you can afford and whatever you think I'm worth, one of the perks that you can claim for yourself is you can submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams. And those were the questions that I answered for the first, in this case, about first hour and a half of the show, because there were so many questions, which was great. But anybody who is a patron or a member has the opportunity to do that in the week leading up to an Ask Away live stream. And if you pledge $5 a month or more, I'll give you a shout out on one of my Trek Actually videos. And also, if you would prefer to do just a one-time gift instead of a regular monthly contribution, you can use the thanks button or send me a gift via PayPal or Venmo. There are links to those in the description. Or you can do a super chat, like just came in from Political Musings with Annie Manuel, who asked thoughts on the Tesla infomercial. I have not seen it, so I have no thoughts. But thanks for the super chat. And also from Prairie Fire, who just threw one in, said, you have at least one fan from Central Nebraska. That's right. Someone enjoys Star Trek from their cornfield. Thank you for entertaining me, and may Chuck Schumer never find peace. Thank you. And I agree with you very much on that sentiment. Back to the end of the show spiel. In addition to the YouTube stuff that I do, if you enjoy what I do here, you might want to check out the podcasts that I am on. There are two of them that are both part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. There is Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I'm on alongside the brilliant and funny and hardworking Jason Harding. And on Late Seating, Jason and I take a look at classic films. We give them a fresh watch and a fresh review and decide whether they deserve whatever reputation they have, good or bad. Our new episode of Late Seating is our review of the really not very good early 2000s sci-fi comedy Evolution, starring David Duchovny, Orlando Jones, and Julianne Moore. Not a great movie, but a fun review to do and a fun show to do. So check that out. And also the Ensign's Log, which is for all you Star Trek fans. If you, like me, enjoy Star Trek and enjoy funny Star Trek or making fun of Star Trek, you might enjoy the Ensign's Log. It's now myself, Jason, and Amanda Billings. Used to include Dana. Dana was a regular cast member until leaving the show recently. But we're going to try to talk her into coming back and making a guest appearance every once in a while. But it's now the three of us, Jason and Amanda and myself, and we play characters who are original characters who exist in the Star Trek universe. And at the moment, we are living and working on Deep Space Nine, and Deep Space Nine stuff from the actual show is kind of happening in the background as we are telling our own stories and getting into our own misadventures. And it is a really fun show. We love doing it. And we hope that you enjoy listening to it as well. And if you have not yet listened to the Ensign's Log, I would recommend that you check it out. And if you enjoy it, you have a lot of episodes to catch up on. So it might be a good podcast binge for you. But you can find that at the link on screen and the links in the video description as well. And last but certainly not least, please do not forget charitylinks.page, which is a doc that has been set up by our friend Some Random Geek, which includes GoFundMe links and crowdfunding links and PayPal links and just various ways you can send money to people who need money, basically people who are in need, who have a little trouble paying the bills, keeping the lights on, putting food on the table, friends of ours who need a helping hand. And if you have a few bucks to spare and you would like to put it toward a very good cause, please check out charitylinks.page and make use of those resources and share some of your resources with people who need them. If you are able and you feel so moved, we would really appreciate it, and I'm sure they would as well. So now let me take a look, one final look at the live chat and see if there are any questions that I missed. Let me see. Cast Iron Chaos says, do you consider yourself a paladin, cavalier, fighter, or ranger? I consider myself a person who doesn't know what any of those are or want to know what any of those are. I consider myself a person that would lay down in front of a train before choosing one of those categories to describe myself. 25AD says, I once saw a vid about fans protesting outside Paramount when they were canceling Enterprise. What would you say to someone who does that with their finite time on this earth? I would say that they should get over it. That they should enjoy the show that they got, and they should look for another show to watch to enjoy, because there will surely be one at some point. Yeah. No, I do not think going out and protesting in front of a studio because your favorite show was canceled is a good use of your time. Mike again says, do you think the O's will make the playoffs this year? I hope so. I hope so too. I may be getting to go to a game this year. I haven't actually been to an Orioles game at Camden Yards for many, many, many years, but a friend of mine broached the possibility of going to a game in July and invited me to come along. So assuming that doesn't fall through, I might actually get to go to see to see an Orioles game in Camden Yards this year. And it would be nice if the team was having a good year, so I hope so. I have no idea whether they will or not, but I hope so. CF 3300 says, why did 10 Democrats vote to end democracy today? Because they are cowards and because they are deeply, deeply, deeply misreading their position, and they are deeply misreading the room right now in terms of American politics. They really don't get what advantages they have in this situation. And they are unwilling to take a little risk in order to press that advantage and put the Republicans and put Donald Trump on the defensive. And it is incredibly frustrating and incredibly disappointing and infuriating. All right, Dana's squeaking. She's leaving. I think I'm going to wrap it up too. Cast Iron Chaos, I didn't ban you. I'm not really going to ban people for talking about D&D shit. I just don't care. I'm not really going to ban you unless people are like obnoxious about it. 255 AD says they interviewed the actor who played Trip and he had to pretend it wasn't weird. Yeah. Oh, Joanna says, what does the symbol on your cap stand for? That is a round sort of badge version of the flag of the state of Maryland, which is my flag, my state, and is also, as I have said many times, the best flag. Not the best state flag, but the best flag of all flags. Okay, I'll answer Pix's question because Pix said, longtime watcher, this is like my third account to watch under. Here's my question. As a Canadian, what if Canada sent the United States an invoice for all the services and help and Underground Railroad and draft dodgers? I think that would be great. I think that would be great if Canada did that. Now, given the current administration, I don't think they should expect payment on that, but I think it would be a wonderful gesture, and I would support it 100%, and I would laugh my ass off. Yeah, that's true, Simon. If people make fun of the Maryland flag, that is an insta ban. That is an insta ban. All right, that's it, everybody. I'm calling an end to the festivities. Thank you all so much for being here, for watching, for interacting, for the awesome questions, for the awesome time in the chat. Could not do this without you. I appreciate you so much, whether you are a patron or a member, or you're just someone who watches and takes part in the stream. I couldn't do it without you. I appreciate you so much. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.